everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Plundering multiversal technology starting from Marvel. Chapter 77 to 84, Chapter 76, Transformers series, Ethan needs to go to school. 1,497 words. For advanced chapters patreon.com/handsomeduckgod. The moment Ethan stepped through his front door, the system spoke. Level 2 mall loading complete. Product list updated. Host, please make your selection. The voice was different. Not dramatically different. Still cold. Still precise. Still the voice of an intelligence that viewed human emotion as a data category rather than an experience. But it had shifted from the genderless monotone of the level 1 mall to something distinctly feminine. Cool. Elegant. The vocal equivalent of a woman in a tailored suit, who would answer your questions efficiently and judge you silently for asking. Ethan approved. It seemed the system understood customer retention. After 500,000 prestige points in transactions, a service upgrade was appropriate. He opened the interface. Prestige, 348,390 Items, none. Level 2 mall, spend 2 million to unlock the next level, current spending, 0/2,000,000. Marvel series Artificial Intelligence Technology, Larval Stage, JARVIS, Marvel Universe, Iron Man Series, 100,000 Prestige. Battle Armor Mark V Manufacturing Technology, Suitcase-style suit, relatively poor defense, but highly portable, 100,000 Prestige. Battle Armor Mark 6 Manufacturing Technology, New Energy Suit, utilizes an advanced nuclear reactor with enhanced performance, 150,000 Prestige. Battle Armor Mark 7 Manufacturing Technology, Flight Pod Armor, Rapid Deployment System, Combat Suit with extensive weapon hardpoints, 200,000 Prestige. Stark Element Synthesis Technology, New element discovered by Tony Stark, reduces reactor pollution while enhancing performance, applicable underwater, 200,000 Prestige. Vibranium Element Synthesis Technology, one of the hardest metals in Marvel, possesses sound-absorbing and shock-absorbing properties, 500,000 Prestige. Ethan's throat went dry. Vibranium. The metal that was so rare in the Marvel Universe it was basically a myth. The material Captain America's shield was made from. Near invulnerable hardness. Perfect energy absorption. Sound dampening. Shock dampening. And the system could synthesize it. Not mine it. Not import it from a fictional African nation. Synthesize it. Which meant mass production. Which meant an entire suit of armor built from vibranium. If that armor existed, today's battle would have been a joke. Forget 80-20mm machine guns. Forget medium-weight missiles. A vibranium suit could tank all of it and ask for seconds. But 500,000 Prestige. He had 348,390. Not enough. Not yet. He kept scrolling. Below the Marvel series, a new category had appeared. Transformers series Bumblebee Manufacturing Technology, Standard Warrior Class Transformer, 200,000 Prestige. One-time Allspark, required to give life to a Transformer, 1 Allspark awakens 1 unit, 100,000 Prestige. Megatron Manufacturing Technology, price that made Ethan's blood pressure spike. Optimus Prime Manufacturing Technology, price that made Ethan stop looking. Ethan closed the lower price listings before his cardiovascular system lodged a formal complaint. Transformers. Living machines. Autonomous combat platforms with their own intelligence, their own initiative, their own ability to fight without a human pilot. In the movies, Bumblebee alone had been a one-unit army. And the system was offering the manufacturing technology plus the spark of life that would make it real. If Ethan could build even one transformer, It would be an invisible bodyguard that never slept, never ate, and could fight with the tactical intelligence of a living being. Incidents like Frank's kidnapping would become impossible. Then he saw the bottom of the interface. Asterisk limited time sale asterisk. To celebrate the opening of the Level 2 mall. Bumblebee Manufacturing Technology plus one-time AllSpark plus AI Technology, JARVIS, larval stage. Original price, 400,000 prestige. Sale price, 348,000 prestige. Ethan stared at the number. 348,000, his balance was 348,390. The system wasn't offering a discount. The system was emptying his wallet. Where did the cold, authoritative systems from stories go? The ones that spoke in cryptic riddles and dispense power with mysterious indifference. How did I end up with a system that runs anniversary sales and prices bundles to the exact cent of my balance? Just say you want all my money and be done with it. This was the first time in his life that Ethan felt his balance was too high. He was certain that if he'd had 250,000, the bundle would have been priced at 249,990. But after thinking it through, genuinely thinking, not just reacting to the absurdity, the bundle was the right choice. He already had battle armor. The Level 2 suits were upgrades, but they were incremental. Better reactors, better deployment systems, more weapons. Important but not transformative. He could build toward them. A transformer was different. A transformer was a force multiplier that didn't require Ethan to be present. An autonomous protector. A bodyguard that could watch over Frank and Linda while Ethan was on the other side of the world. And JARVIS, even in its larval stage, was an artificial intelligence. The foundation for every future armor system, every automated process, every piece of technology that needed a mind behind it. Also, if he didn't take advantage of a deal, he'd be miserable about it for weeks. He bought the bundle. Asterisk, redemption confirmed. Transferring knowledge, asterisk. The data flood was unlike anything he'd experienced before. The Level 1 downloads, reactor, armor, serum, had been substantial. This was an ocean. The manufacturing specifications for a transformer were orders of magnitude more complex than a suit of armor, because a transformer wasn't just hardware. It was a civilization's worth of engineering condensed into a single unit. The AllSpark knowledge was stranger still. In the Earth Prime memories, the transformers weren't invented. They were born. The AllSpark was the source of Cybertronian life, a cosmic artifact that turned dead metal into living beings. But the system had modified the concept, stripping the mystical elements and reframing it as technology. Reproducible. Controllable. The biological intelligence was reduced, which meant Ethan wouldn't have to worry about his creation developing its own agenda. That was important. Against a species of intelligent machines, you had to be practical about loyalty. He'd link JARVIS to monitor them once the AI was operational. The download completed. Ethan sat on his bed, rubbing his temples, organizing the new knowledge into compartments that his mind could access without drowning. Prestige, 390. From nearly 500,000 to 390. The system had cleaned him out. He fell asleep with a head full of Cybertronian engineering, and a balance that wouldn't buy a single item in the Level 1 mall. Early the next morning, his phone rang. Ethan saw the caller, Frank, and did what any rational person would do after saving the world. He hung up and went back to sleep. 5 minutes later, his front door opened. Frank Holloway had a key. Frank Holloway had no patience. Frank Holloway was a former soldier who considered sleeping past dawn a moral failing. He marched into Ethan's bedroom and yanked the covers off in one motion. "You brat. You dare hang up on me?" Ethan sat up with his eyes still closed, wearing the expression of a man who could bench press a helicopter, but could not win an argument with his uncle. Frank, seeing the lazy posture, did what he'd been doing since Ethan was 5 years old, He rapped him sharply on the head. In the old days, this would have stung enough to wake Ethan instantly. But the serum had restructured every tissue in his body, including his scalp. Frank's knuckles connected with what was effectively a skull wrapped in biological armor. The impact produced a dull thwack. Frank's hand went slightly numb. Ethan didn't react. Frank was preparing to escalate when Ethan scrambled out of bed with a grin. "What's up, Uncle Frank? It's so early, I haven't had enough sleep. Ever since you dropped out, you've gotten lazier by the day. The sun is practically overhead and you're still in bed." Ethan, head bowed in the standard receiving lecture position, glanced sideways at the alarm clock and then at the window. The sky wasn't even light yet. Overhead. "The sun doesn't even have a shadow right now, old man." But talking back to Frank Holloway during a lecture was a survival decision, not a debate tactic. Ethan chose survival. "Here." Frank shoved a stack of documents into Ethan's hands. "Enrollment papers. Starting today, you're attending 9th middle school. You will go to class. You will sit at a desk. You will learn things that are not related to fusion reactors or battle armor." Ethan's head swelled to twice its normal size. He had a transformer to build. An AI to develop. A suit of vibranium armor to plan. The most important engineering projects in human history were sitting in his brain waiting to be born, and his uncle wanted him to attend high school. But Frank Holloway's jaw was set in the specific configuration that meant, this is not a discussion, and Ethan, who had stared down the defense secretary of the Aurelian Republic without flinching, recognized a fight he couldn't win. He took the papers. "Yes, Uncle Frank." Chapter 78, Chapter 77, Out of Place, Ethan the Errand Boy. 1412 words. For advanced chapters /patreon.com/handsomeduckgod. At 6:30 in the morning, the sky barely starting to lighten, Ethan Mercer appeared at the gates of 9th Middle School with a backpack and the expression of a man walking to his own execution. Frank hadn't had time to get him a proper uniform. Ethan was wearing the blazer from his old school, Ashford Prep's colors, which stood out against the 9th Middle School dress code like a penguin at a pool party. The moment he stepped through the gates, heads turned. Fingers pointed. Whispers spread. Ethan's pulse spiked. If he was recognized, the entire low-profile strategy was dead. Frank had been extremely clear, nobody could know that the transfer student was that Ethan Mercer. If the school found out, every classroom would become a press conference, every hallway a photo opportunity, and every lesson would be replaced by students trying to get selfies with the kid who'd dragged a helicopter out of the sky on live television. Stay calm. The pointing is about the uniform, not the face. Hey, buddy. Which class are you in? Why aren't you wearing the uniform? A hand slapped Ethan's shoulder from behind. The serum reacted before his brain did. Every enhanced muscle in his upper body tensed for a throw, the kind of reflexive response that would have launched a 140-pound teenager 20 meters across the courtyard and ended Ethan's academic career before it started. He caught himself. Barely. Class 11. Just transferred. Haven't gotten the uniform yet. The hand's owner circled around to face him, a lanky kid with a friendly grin, and the energy of someone who treated every stranger as a potential best friend. No way. I'm class 11 too. Come on, I'll take you. On the walk, Ethan learned his guide's name was Tyler Briggs. Tyler, why was everyone staring at me back there? The uniform, man. Nobody used to care about uniforms around here. But things are different now. Different how? Tyler looked at him with genuine shock. You seriously don't know? Our principal, Principal Holloway, is that Ethan Mercer's uncle. Ethan kept his face perfectly neutral. Because of that connection, officials from the Education Bureau and the Department of Education show up every couple of days for inspections. Tyler made air quotes. They say they're inspecting, but they're really just kissing up to the principal. His nephew is the hottest name in the country right now. The Aurelian Republic literally tried to kidnap the guy a few days ago. Ethan, hearing himself described as the hottest name in the country, by a kid who didn't know he was talking to the hottest name in the country, felt heat crawl up the back of his neck. Even his thick skin had limits. They entered the Class 11 classroom. The noise cut off like someone had hit a mute button. 30 pairs of eyes locked onto the kid in the wrong uniform. In a school where dress code compliance had become a survival skill, not wearing the blazer was the visual equivalent of setting off a flare. A burly kid in the back row broke the silence. "Tyler, who's the new guy?" The way Tyler flinched at the question told Ethan everything he needed to know about the power dynamics in this classroom. "Brother Dex, this is our new transfer student. His name is, Tyler turned to Ethan. "What is your name?" "Will Yong." The fake name on his enrollment papers. Frank's creative contribution. Will Yong. Ethan had stared at it for a full 30 seconds that morning, and concluded that his uncle's imagination was approximately as developed as a brick. Will Yong. Really, Uncle Frank? Why not just call me John Smith and be done with it? The burly kid, Dex Harmon, was sizing him up from the back row. His eyes traveled from Ethan's second-hand blazer to his slim build to his face, and the assessment that formed was visible in real time: small, broke, no threat. Will Yong. Dex leaned back in his chair. "We've got a rule in Class 11. New kid handles cleanup, blackboard duty, and water runs." Ethan was amused. He'd spent the last 48 hours fighting through the Aurelian Republic's Department of Defense, dragging helicopters out of the sky, and destroying fighter jet formations with infrared lasers. And now a high school bully was assigning him water duty. "Sure. No problem. Anyone thirsty?" Tyler opened his mouth to say something. Caught Dex's glare. Closed it. Dex raised his water bottle. "Fill mine." The 4 or 5 kids surrounding him, the particular species of teenage boy that orbits bullies like pilot fish around a shark, chimed in immediately. "Mine too." "Same here." Dex looked at Tyler and smiled. Not a friendly smile. "Tyler, you must be thirsty too. Give your bottle to the new kid." Tyler wanted to refuse. He saw Dex crack his knuckles. Bad memories surfaced. He handed his bottle to Ethan without meeting his eyes. Ethan took all 6 bottles, walked to the water dispenser, and filled them without complaint. The first 2 periods were science classes. For a person who'd designed fusion reactors and synthesized Captain America's supersoldier serum, 10th grade physics and chemistry posed a challenge roughly equivalent to tying his shoes. During the 20-minute morning break, Ethan finished both classes' homework assignments in 5 minutes. Not because he rushed. Because the problems were so far below his capability that answering them was closer to a reflex than a cognitive activity. With 15 minutes left, he didn't sit idle. He found a broom and dustpan in the corner, and started sweeping the classroom. Thoroughly. Under the desks, along the walls, into the corners that hadn't seen a broom since the school was built. Then he found a rag, washed it, and started on the windows. The other students watched with the particular discomfort of people observing someone being exploited by a bully and doing nothing about it. One of Dex's own crew pulled him aside. "Dex, this kid isn't a troublemaker. Look at him, he's actually doing everything. Maybe we should ease up." Dex's expression darkened. He backhanded the kid across the ear. "In this classroom, do you make the rules, or do I?" Everyone looked at the floor. Angry. Silent. During the next break, Tyler found a moment when Dex wasn't watching and pulled Ethan into the hallway. "Will, you're way too agreeable. You don't have to do everything they say. Just do enough to show Dex you acknowledge him. That's it. Nobody expects you to actually clean the whole room." Ethan blinked. "Isn't this the rule? New student handles cleanup. Tyler's frustration visibly warred with his guilt over the water bottle incident. What rule? There is no rule. Dex Harmon is just a thug who likes pushing people around. He's been running Class 11 since he transferred in, and nobody stops him. There are 30 of you in one class. Why not just deal with him? Tyler's face went through anger, then consideration, then deflation. First, the guy transferred from a sports academy. He can actually fight. Like, really fight. Nobody in this class can take him. Second, his dad used to be, let's say, connected. Now he runs one of the bigger real estate development companies in Ashford City. Regular kids like us can't afford to make an enemy like that. Ethan leaned against the hallway wall and looked at the ceiling. A bully with fighting skills and a rich father who used to be a thug. In a school where the principal was Frank Holloway, who was currently too busy with Education Bureau inspections to notice the power dynamics in a single classroom. Ethan had built a fusion reactor, 3 suits of Iron Man armor, Captain America's serum, and was about to construct a transformer. And he was being bullied by a 16-year-old whose biggest achievement was transferring from a sports academy. He almost laughed. Almost. Don't worry about it, Tyler. I don't mind the cleaning. Tyler gave him a look that was equal parts gratitude and pity. Poor kid. He's too nice for this place. If Tyler had known that the poor kid he was pitying could bench press the school bus, and had killed 2 people with his bare hands on live television 3 days ago, the pity would have been redirected. Specifically, toward Dex Harmon. Chapter 79, Chapter 78, A Restrained Teacher, The Persistent School Bully. 1,677 words. For advanced chapters /patreon.com/handsomeduckgod. After Ethan and Tyler returned to the classroom, the bell was seconds away. The teacher for this period walked in briskly, and the room transformed. Conversations died. Postures straightened. Even Dex Harmon's crew in the back row pulled their feet off the desks and adopted something approaching respectful behavior. Mr. Langley, the homeroom teacher of Class 11, was having a terrible week. Ever since Principal Holloway's nephew had become the most famous person in the Republic, 9th Middle School had turned into a political zoo. Education Bureau officials. Department of Education representatives. Municipal bureaucrats who'd never set foot in a school in their lives. All of them showing up for inspections that consisted entirely of trying to get on the principal's good side in hopes of building a connection to Ethan Mercer. It made Langley's skin crawl. He was a veteran teacher at the worst school in Ashford City, and he'd survived this long by being honest and stubborn. He knew Frank Holloway's temperament as well as he knew his own. The principal was even more stubborn than he was. If these bureaucrats thought they could schmooze Frank into giving them access to his nephew, they were delusional. Suppressing his irritation, Langley was about to start his lesson when his eye caught a student not wearing the school uniform. The frustration spiked. This was 9th Middle School, yes, the bottom of Ashford City's academic hierarchy. But in Langley's classroom, a student looked like a student. No flash. No nonconformity. No testing boundaries through wardrobe choices. He was opening his mouth to deliver a reprimand when he actually looked at the kid's face. Strange. And familiar. He'd never seen this student at 9th Middle School before. But the features were triggering a recognition circuit in his brain that he couldn't quite complete. Where had he seen this face? In the back row, Dex's crew noticed Langley staring at the new kid. The old man's going to tear him apart for the uniform thing. Langley's creative with punishment. This should be good. Free entertainment. Then the circuit completed. The photograph. In the principal's office. On the shelf behind the desk, next to the flag. A teenage boy, smiling, in a frame that Frank Holloway touched every time he walked past it. This kid looks exactly like. No. That's impossible. That person should be in a national laboratory right now, conducting research that's shaking the foundations of physics and biology. He wouldn't be sitting in a classroom at the worst high school in Ashford City. Unless. Langley thought about Frank Holloway. The man who'd been a soldier. A principal. A guardian who'd raised his nephew with the specific, iron-willed conviction that education came first, fame second, and there were no exceptions. Unless his uncle dragged him here. Langley's mouth, which had been open for a reprimand, closed. Well. Let's begin today's lesson. The class erupted in silent confusion. What? Langley had once made Dex Harmon stand in the hallway for an entire class period for an untucked shirt. And now he was ignoring a kid who wasn't wearing the uniform at all. Dex's face darkened. The message was obvious: the old man considered this new kid above the rules that applied to everyone else. Which meant, in the social calculus of Class 11, that the new kid outranked Dex. That was unacceptable. Langley taught mathematics, and he taught it well. But for Ethan, whose current knowledge base included the theoretical frameworks for fusion reactor design, Cybertronian mechanical engineering, and cellular-level human biochemistry, 10th grade math occupied approximately the same cognitive space as breathing. He didn't listen to the lecture. Instead, he pulled out a stack of scratch paper and began working through the manufacturing calculations for Bumblebee. The transformer's structural specifications were enormously complex, orders of magnitude beyond anything in the Level 1 MALS technology set. The Allsparks activation protocols alone required a mathematical framework that would have earned a doctorate at any university in the Republic. Ethan worked through the equations in the margins of scratch paper, using the school's math class as background noise. More than half the period passed. Langley was wrapping up and decided to review a problem from yesterday's homework, a tricky one that had stumped most of the class. Does anyone understand this problem? Feel free to stand up and explain your approach. Silence. From the back row, Dex saw his opportunity. Teacher, just because we don't know doesn't mean the new student doesn't. His crew caught the signal and piled on. Yeah, I saw student Yang calculating like crazy since the start of class. A little math problem shouldn't be anything for him. Let's hear the genius's answer. Cold sweat formed on Langley's forehead. Asking this person to solve a high school math problem. That's like asking a nuclear physicist to explain how a light switch works. If I call on him and it gets out that I made Ethan Mercer answer a 10th grade question, the internet will eat me alive by tomorrow morning. He was about to deflect when Ethan stood up. Teacher, there are specifically 5 methods for solving this problem. He began. The first solution was the standard approach, clean, efficient, the method that any competent student might arrive at with enough effort. The second was an algebraic shortcut that compressed the problem into 3 lines. The third used a geometric interpretation that reframed the entire question. The fourth applied a technique from number theory that nobody in the room, including Langley, had considered. The fifth was elegant in a way that made Langley's hands go still on his podium. It solved the problem from first principles, building the answer from foundational axioms, as if the question were a theorem to be proven rather than a problem to be solved. The expressions in the classroom evolved in real time. Disdain became curiosity. Curiosity became surprise. Surprise became the specific, open-mouthed shock of students who'd expected a punchline and gotten a masterclass. Dex, in the last row, watched the kid he'd assigned water duty deliver 5 solutions to a problem that had stumped the entire class, and felt the public humiliation land on him instead of his target. On the podium, Langley was entranced. When an expert reveals their depth, even a fellow practitioner feels the gap. This problem was from the citywide joint examination. Every mathematics teacher in Ashford City, working collectively, had identified 3 solutions. Ethan had found 5. In the time it took to explain them. He finished his explanation and sat down. Calm. Unhurried. As if he'd just read aloud from a grocery list. Langley stood in silence for a full 3 seconds after the explanation ended. Thank you. to this student for the explanation. His voice was slightly unsteady. Class dismissed. He didn't take his lesson plans. He didn't organize his materials. He walked out of the classroom with the measured speed of a man trying very hard not to run, went directly to his office, drained his entire water bottle in one continuous gulp, looked at the sweat stains on his shirt, and headed straight for the principal's office. He didn't care what it took. He needed this student transferred out of his class. Today. Not because the kid was a problem. Because teaching a class that contained Ethan Mercer was like performing surgery in front of the surgeon who'd invented the procedure. No teacher's nerves could survive that. Back in class 11, Langley's hasty departure triggered a wave of delighted chaos. Will. That was incredible. You actually scared Langley out of his own classroom. 5 solutions. 5. I couldn't even find one. Teach me, teach me. I've got a test next week. Ethan accepted the praise with a smile and a series of modest deflections. The attention was warmer than he'd expected. These were ordinary kids, not prodigies, not elites, not the cream of Ashford City's academic establishment. They were students at the worst school in the city, and they were genuinely impressed, genuinely excited, genuinely happy that someone in their class had done something remarkable. In the back row, Dex Harmon watched the new kid become the center of the classroom's social gravity, and felt the cold fury of a bully whose territory was being invaded. He'd tried to humiliate Will Yong. Instead, he'd given him a stage. His hand closed around the leg of an iron stool. Whoosh! The stool sailed across the classroom. Ethan tilted his head. The serum's enhanced reaction time registered the projectile before it left Dex's hand. The trajectory was obvious. The speed was trivial. Ethan moved his head approximately 4 centimeters to the left, and the stool passed through the space where his skull had been a fraction of a second earlier. It hit the wall behind him with a crash that silenced the room. Every student who'd been chatting froze. Then scattered back to their seats with the speed of people who'd been through this before, and knew what the aftermath looked like. Dex stood in the back row, fists clenched, face dark, radiating the specific menace of a teenager who'd been embarrassed publicly, and had exactly one method of reasserting control. Ethan turned to face him. His expression had changed. The easygoing transfer student, the willing errand boy, the kid who'd cleaned windows without complaint, was gone. What was left was something quieter and considerably less comfortable to look at. He hadn't intended to bother with Dex Harmon. The gap between their respective capability levels made conflict absurd. It would have been like getting angry at a mosquito. But a thrown stool, in a room full of students who could have been hit, from a person who didn't care about collateral damage, crossed a line that had nothing to do with personal insult and everything to do with the safety of the people around him. Ethan looked at Dex the way a person looks at a problem that has just become worth solving. Chapter 80, Chapter 79, Tyler's Loyalty, a fierce fight breaks out. 1,590 words. For advanced chapters /patreon.com/handsome.god. Tyler Briggs was at war with himself. On one side, self-preservation. The rational, survival-oriented part of his brain that understood the rules of 9th middle school's social ecosystem. Dex Harmon ran class 11. Challenging Dex meant getting hurt. Getting hurt meant missing school. Missing school meant falling behind. The math was simple and the conclusion was clear: don't get involved. On the other side, the kid who'd called him Brother Tyler, and filled his water bottle without complaint, and cleaned the windows without being asked, and solved 5 math problems that stumped the entire city's teaching corps, and was about to get a stool-shaped lesson in the cost of being impressive. Don't move, Tyler. Whatever you do, don't stick your neck out. His brain was screaming at maximum volume. He stepped forward anyway. Dex, cool it. The words left his mouth, and Tyler instantly regretted them. But backing down after speaking up was worse than not speaking up at all. We're all classmates. Whatever the issue is, there's no need to take it this far. Dex's anger, which had been focused on Ethan, pivoted. Fine. The new kid's been here half a day, and someone's already talking back on his behalf. If I let this slide, I lose control of the entire class by tomorrow. He turned, crossed the distance to Tyler in 3 steps, and swung. No warning. No posturing. A clean, hard right aimed directly at Tyler's face. The kind of punch that a kid who'd trained at a sports academy for years could throw with enough force to rearrange bone structure. If it landed, Tyler was going to need a surgeon. Several girls in the classroom covered their eyes. 1 second. 2 seconds. Tyler's scream didn't come. Everyone looked. Ethan's hand was wrapped around Dex's forearm. The fist had stopped approximately 1 centimeter from the tip of Tyler's nose. It wasn't moving. Tyler, cross-eyed from staring at the knuckles that had nearly remodeled his face, made a sound that wasn't quite a word and wasn't quite a whimper. The classroom went silent. Dex Harmon, the undisputed strongest kid in 9th middle school, the sports academy transfer who'd never lost a fight on school grounds, the boy whose shot put could have earned him a spot on the provincial team, was straining with visible effort against a grip he couldn't break. Veins appeared on Dex's neck. His face went red. He pushed harder. Then harder. The arm didn't move. Ethan stood there with the relaxed posture of someone holding a door open, not someone engaged in a contest of strength. His expression was calm. His breathing was normal. He didn't appear to be exerting any effort at all. Dex's crew watched their leader, the boy who dominated every physical confrontation they'd ever seen, pour everything he had into breaking a grip, and fail. The thin kid in the wrong uniform was holding him like a parent holds a toddler's arm during a tantrum. Dex tried to pull his hand back to throw with the other fist. He couldn't. The grip wasn't just strong. It was immovable. His forearm felt like it was clamped in an industrial vise. The bones were beginning to ache. Ethan increased the pressure. Not dramatically. Just enough. Dex's knees buckled. In front of the entire class, the king of Class 11 dropped to the ground. Not voluntarily. His legs simply gave out under the grinding force being applied to his forearm. Are you just going to watch? The roar was directed at his crew. Get over here. The 5 or 6 lackeys snapped out of their paralysis and scrambled for anything that could serve as a weapon. Chairs. Broom handles. A pencil case that was heavier than it should have been. They rushed Ethan from multiple directions. A trace of amusement appeared at the corner of Ethan's mouth. When I was in the Aurelian Republic, I fought through teams of fully armed Special Forces operatives. 20 of them. In 3 minutes. And now I'm supposed to be worried about 6 high schoolers with chairs. His left hand flicked. Dex Harmon, who weighed approximately 170 pounds, left the floor. Not pushed. Not shoved. Launched. Across the width of the classroom, into the back wall, with enough force to make the impact echo through the hallway outside. The counterforce rippled through Dex's body. He crumpled against the base of the wall, stunned, his limbs operating on a several-second delay from his brain. Then Ethan turned to the incoming crew. 8 seconds later, it was over. He hadn't punched anyone. Hadn't kicked anyone. Hadn't used anything that could be described as violence in the conventional sense. What he'd done was more like redirection. A grab here, a pivot there, a controlled application of force that used each attacker's momentum against them, depositing them on the floor in a sequence so efficient it looked choreographed. 6 bodies. 6 wailing teenagers. 0 serious injuries. Ethan had calibrated every interaction. These were high school kids, not Aurelian operatives. They were 16 years old, angry and stupid. They weren't evil. They deserved to lose a fight, not to be hospitalized. By the time Dex pulled himself off the wall and looked up, His entire crew was on the ground, making sounds that suggested they'd developed a sudden and passionate interest in lying down. Tyler Briggs, still standing exactly where Dex's fist had almost hit him, stared at the scene with an expression that his face wasn't designed to produce. Is this a movie? Wing Chun? Some kind of martial arts film? I want to fight 10 people, that's a line from a movie. It doesn't happen in real life. But it had just happened. In his classroom. By the kid who'd been filling water bottles 2 hours ago. Ethan dusted off his hands, walked back to his seat, and sat down. The class looked at him with the specific, reverent silence that follows a miracle. The boys were staring with open admiration. A kid who was smart enough to solve unsolvable math problems and could fight well enough to flatten the school's toughest bully and his entire crew in under 10 seconds. That wasn't a student. That was a protagonist who'd accidentally enrolled. The girls were looking with something more complex. Admiration, certainly. But also the particular reassessment that happens when someone who'd been invisible becomes very, very visible. The slightly built transfer student in the wrong uniform had just revealed himself as possibly the most interesting person in the building. Ethan, noticing the looks from the female half of the class, briefly misattributed the attention to his appearance. Maybe the serum improved my looks. I should see if I can get a booster dose. That way I won't have to worry about finding a girlfriend in the future. This assessment was incorrect. The girls were not impressed by his looks, which were average at best. They were impressed by the fact that he'd just done something impossible, and then sat back down like it was nothing. But Ethan's self-awareness in romantic matters had always been his weakest attribute. Dex, leaning against the back wall with the posture of a man whose worldview had been physically restructured, forced himself upright. His face was a mask of humiliation and fury. You've got guts, new kid. His voice was rough. Each word cost him something. If you've got the nerve, don't leave after school. North Gate. We'll finish this outside. Tyler grabbed Ethan's arm. Don't go. Dex's dad is in real estate. He's got construction crews on payroll. Those guys don't fight fair, they fight dirty. Pipes. Bricks. It's not worth it. Ethan waved him off. Before he could respond, the teacher for the next period walked in. The lackeys, still on the floor, saw their opportunity and committed fully to the performance. Teacher. You have to help us. We were just trying to make friends with the new student, and he attacked us for no reason. We were being friendly. He just started hitting people. The teacher looked at the 6 boys on the floor. Then at Dex against the wall. Then at the new student sitting calmly in his seat with his hands folded. The teacher's expression traveled through several distinct phases: concern, skepticism, recognition, and finally a specific kind of exhaustion. He knew these kids. Making friends was not in their behavioral repertoire. The scene was obvious: they'd tried to bully the transfer student and discovered, in the most direct way possible, that the transfer student was not the kind of person who gets bullied. And that transfer student. God damn it. Langley had told him during the break. The teacher had nearly fallen out of his chair. That kid. That's the kid. In MY class. Sitting at a desk. Looking like a normal student. You're already the most accomplished scientist in the Republic, and you're still coming to school. Are you ever going to give us teachers a chance to feel competent? He looked at the wailing boys on the floor, then at Ethan, and made the executive decision that this situation was approximately 7,000 pay grades above his authority. Everyone. Get up. Class is starting. He turned to the blackboard and began writing, deliberately not asking any follow-up questions. Some problems solved themselves. And some problems were so far beyond a teacher's jurisdiction that pretending they didn't exist was the only rational response. Chapter 81, Chapter 80, The Leaders Coming to Investigate, Expel Ethan. 1804 words. For advanced chapters/patreon.com/handsomeduckgod. The teacher who walked into class 11 for the next period took one look at Dex Harmon's crew scattered across the floor, groaning and clutching various body parts, and made a professional assessment. You picked a fight with that kid. The one who jumped off a building and dusted himself off. What exactly did you expect? She stepped over the nearest casualty, walked to the podium, and began the lesson as if the floor wasn't decorated with beaten teenagers. Seeing the teacher completely ignore them, the bullies eventually realized that sympathy wasn't coming. One by one, they peeled themselves off the floor and slunk back to their seats, nursing bruised egos and various contusions. In the back row, Dex Harmon was thinking. Not about revenge. About something he'd noticed. 2 consecutive teachers had treated the new transfer student with a deference that didn't match his supposed status. Langley had ignored a uniform violation he'd have punished anyone else for. This teacher had walked past a pile of beaten students without batting an eye. Did I misjudge this kid? Does he have some kind of background I don't know about? The question hung in Dex's mind as the period continued. 40 minutes later, the lunch bell was approaching. Students were already mentally checked out, bags half-packed, legs tensed for the cafeteria sprint. Then footsteps echoed from the hallway, and the classroom went rigid. The door opened. Vice Principal Song entered first, followed by 4 men in suits whose bearing screamed, "Government official," so loudly it was practically audible. "Students, these gentlemen are leaders from the neighboring city's Education Bureau, here to conduct a research visit at our school. Let's give them a warm welcome." Song led the applause. The class followed with the mechanical enthusiasm of students who'd endured this exact performance 6 times in the last week. Visiting officials had become a daily occurrence since Frank Holloway's connection to Ethan Mercer had made 9th Middle School the most politically interesting educational institution in the Republic. The officials, hearing the applause, raised their chins and basked in the attention with the particular satisfaction of mid-level bureaucrats, who didn't receive enough of it in their daily lives. About a minute in, the lead official raised his hand to signal the applause should stop. His peripheral vision swept the room, checking that every face was directed appropriately upward. One wasn't. In the 3rd row, a student had his head down, writing furiously on scratch paper, apparently oblivious to the visitor's existence. Not wearing the uniform, either. The official's expression curdled. "Vice Principal Song, what is this? A prestigious institution like 9th Middle School has a student who can't even be bothered to wear the uniform." His colleagues piled on, the way officials do when they sense an opportunity to assert authority. "This is an embarrassment to Principal Holloway, and a disgrace to our national hero, Ethan Mercer. What kind of discipline are you running here?" Vice Principal Song broke into an immediate sweat. "My sincere apologies, leaders. This student, Will Yong, is said to be a relative of Principal Holloway's wife. He just transferred today, and we haven't had time to issue a uniform yet." The mention of a connection to Holloway cooled the officials by approximately 1 degree. They couldn't afford to offend Frank Holloway. Through his nephew, the man had a direct line to the highest levels of government. Mere city-level Education Bureau officials did not want to be on the wrong side of that equation. Under normal circumstances, a quick apology from the student would have resolved it. The officials would have accepted the gesture, demonstrated their authority, and moved on. The student did not apologize. The student did not look up. The student continued writing calculations on scratch paper, as if for government officials were not standing at the front of his classroom specifically demanding his attention. The lead official's face went from displeased to genuinely angry. "Vice Principal Song. This student's character is unacceptable. No respect for authority. No sense of proper conduct. How could 9th Middle School admit someone like this?" Before Song could respond, the student whose calculations had been interrupted by the escalating volume finally looked up. Ethan's expression was the specific brand of impatience that comes from a person who is working on Cybertronian manufacturing specifications, and has been forced to stop by 4 men whose combined contribution to human knowledge wouldn't fill a napkin. Stop babbling. If you have something to say, say it. You're wasting everyone's lunch period. The room stopped breathing. Respect for authority. Ethan continued, his voice flat. Are any of you qualified to teach me anything? Class 11 collectively ascended to a higher plane of existence. The new kid wasn't just talking back to Education Bureau officials. He was dismissing them. In their faces. In their jurisdiction. While not wearing the uniform. In the back row, Dex Harmon felt a cold smile form on his face. This is perfect. The idiot is digging his own grave. The Education Bureau will have him expelled, and I won't have to lift a finger. The lead official, who hadn't been spoken to like this since he was a junior clerk 20 years ago, abandoned all pretense of composure. Do you realize that with one word from me, you won't be able to attend school anywhere in this province? Ethan looked at him. Considered the threat the way a person considers a weather forecast for a city they don't live in. I don't believe you. The officials turned to Song with the synchronized fury of men whose authority had been publicly invalidated. Vice Principal Song, I shouldn't have to tell you how to handle a student with this kind of character. Do I? Song was trapped. If this were any other student, expulsion would be straightforward. But this student had been enrolled by Frank Holloway personally. Acting against him could end Song's career. Not acting could also end Song's career, because the four men staring at him controlled the Education Bureau of the neighboring city, and had enough political connections to make his life unpleasant in dozens of ways. Song opened his mouth, preparing to deliver the compromise solution of temporarily removing the student from the classroom. Ha ha ha. Old Holloway, you really are something. A voice from the hallway. Loud. Familiar to exactly one person in the room, and terrifying to everyone else based purely on the company it kept. Forcing our national treasure to attend high school, nobody else in this country would have the nerve. Frank Holloway's voice came next, closer, with the dry amusement of a man who'd been dealing with his nephew's chaos for 13 years, and had stopped being surprised. Director Graves, please. National treasure. Giant pandas are more precious than that troublemaker. That's not fair, old Holloway. The kid stirs up trouble, I'll grant you that. But in terms of contributions to this republic, he doesn't lose to anyone alive. The officials in the classroom heard the conversation, and turned toward the door. Then their legs nearly gave out. They recognized Frank Holloway, the principal whose nephew had made this school famous. But the man walking beside him, the one Holloway was bantering with as an equal, was someone they'd never met, but whose presence communicated everything they needed to know. Because behind both of them, the top government official in Ashford City was following. Not walking beside. Following. With the specific posture of a subordinate, who knew his place in the hierarchy, and was comfortable staying there. Whoever this man was, he outranked everyone in the building by a margin that made the Education Bureau officials' authority look like a child's play crown. Frank entered the classroom, spotted Ethan immediately, and sighed with the weary affection of a man whose nephew was constitutionally incapable of going 12 hours without causing an incident. You little rascal. I just wanted you to attend school like a normal kid, and you actually managed to summon this one. Ethan looked helpless. I had no choice, Uncle Frank. If I'd called you first, you'd have probably beaten me before listening. He turned to Graves. Director Graves, a phone call to my uncle would have been enough. You didn't need to make the trip. Graves waved it off. I still had business in Ashford City from yesterday. Don't worry about it. The conversation was casual. Familiar. The easy back and forth of people who'd been through a crisis together, and come out the other side with a bond that didn't require formality. And then Ethan took off his hat. The face beneath the hat had been on every screen in the Republic for the last 48 hours. The recognition was instantaneous. Oh my God. Ethan Mercer. Are you kidding me? Professor Mercer is in our class. No wonder he solved that math problem 5 different ways. No wonder Langley ran out of his own classroom. And that fight earlier, he took on 10 of them. Forget 10. This is the guy who fought through the Aurelian Republic's Department of Defense with his bare hands. He dragged a helicopter out of the sky. He destroyed 40 fighter jets in 1 second. The classroom descended into the specific variety of chaos that occurs when 30 teenagers discover that the quiet new kid who was filling their water bottles an hour ago is the most famous person in the country. In the back row, Dex Harmon sat very still. The pieces assembled themselves with the merciless clarity of a puzzle completing. The teacher's deference. The casual fighting ability. The 5 math solutions. The dodge. The strength. The principal's nephew. The kid he'd been bullying all morning was Ethan Mercer. The kid he'd thrown a stool at was a super soldier who had killed 2 people on live television and could bench press a truck. Dex Harmon, who had spent the morning establishing dominance over a teenager he'd assessed as small, broke, no threat, felt the blood drain from his face in a way that was both metaphorical and entirely physical. The Education Bureau officials, standing at the front of the classroom, looked at the student they'd been threatening to expel and experienced a similar revelation, except their blood drained faster and further. They had just told Ethan Mercer, the Republic's most important individual, the inventor of fusion technology, battle armor, and the super soldier serum, the person whose safety was a direct priority of the Chancellor and the Bureau of Internal Affairs, that they would prevent him from attending school. With one word. The lead official's mouth opened and closed several times without producing sound, which was, all things considered, a significant improvement over the sounds it had been producing earlier. Chapter 82, Chapter 81, Identity Exposed, Graves' Request. 1,651 words. For advanced chapters /patreon.com/handsomeduckgod. In the last row of Class 11, Dex Harmon's crew was experiencing a collective psychological event. We attacked Ethan Mercer. The Ethan Mercer. The one who turned Aurelian Republic agents into wall decorations on live television. If he'd been even slightly serious just now, would any of us still have teeth? The answer, which arrived in each of their minds with the speed of mortal terror, was no. Not teeth. Not consciousness. Possibly not skeletal integrity. Dex himself was in worse shape than his crew. He'd spent the morning establishing dominance over a kid he'd assessed as a soft target. He'd assigned him water duty. Thrown a stool at him. Ordered his crew to rush him with chairs. The kid was Ethan Mercer. The kid had killed 2 people with his bare hands 3 days ago. The kid could bench press the building they were sitting in. Dex's legs stopped working. He slid off his stool and hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the suddenly very quiet classroom. The sound snapped the Education Bureau officials out of their frozen state. We just threatened to expel Ethan Mercer from school. We told the Republic's most important person that one word from us would end his academic career. Our careers are over. Our careers have been over for approximately 90 seconds, and we're only now catching up. Frank, surveying the chaos in the classroom, beaten bullies on the floor, Education Bureau officials the color of old paper, his nephew standing in the middle of it all looking mildly inconvenienced, turned to Vice Principal Song. Song, what happened here? Song, who had nearly expelled the Republic's most valuable citizen moments before these people arrived, grabbed the lifeline with both hands. Principal Holloway, these Education Bureau officials conducting the inspection demanded, without any justification, that I expel student Mercer. He pivoted toward the officials with an expression that converted weeks of accumulated frustration into righteous indignation. I explained that the student was newly transferred and hadn't received a uniform yet. I explained there were extenuating circumstances. They refused to listen and insisted on expulsion. Frank's expression darkened. The reason? Not wearing the school uniform, sir. Before Frank could respond, the top government official of Ashford City, the one who'd been following Graves through the hallway like a well-trained subordinate, stepped forward. Is this account accurate? The question was directed at the Education Bureau officials. It was delivered in the specific register of a man whose authority was absolute within this city, and who had just heard something that offended him professionally. The officials' faces went gray. Their lips trembled. Their minds, which had been generating excuses at high speed, produced nothing usable. Graves didn't wait for an answer. "Get out." His voice filled the room the way a cold front fills a valley. "Disgraceful. Go back to your offices and await disciplinary action." The Republic's government does not employ pampered incompetents who threaten teenagers to inflate their own importance. The officials left. Quickly. Without looking back. Without speaking. With the posture of men who understood that the next phase of their careers would involve significantly less authority and significantly more regret. Graves pointed toward the door. "Let's go, kid. I have something to discuss with you." Ethan shrugged and was about to follow when his eye caught Tyler Briggs, sitting at his desk, looking at the scene with an expression that mixed awe, confusion, and the specific emotional overload of a teenager who'd stepped up to defend a stranger and discovered the stranger was the most famous person in the country. Ethan stopped. Turned back. He walked past the silent rows of students, past the still-frozen Dex crew, until he reached the back of the classroom. Dex, slumped on the floor, saw Ethan approaching and felt every muscle in his body lock. Ethan bent down and spoke into Dex's ear. Quietly enough that only Dex could hear. "Tyler Briggs is my friend. If you want to spend the second half of your life in prison, try touching him." Dex nodded so vigorously his neck almost sprained. Ethan straightened up, walked to Tyler's desk, tore a page from his notebook, and wrote his phone number on it. "Tyler. This is my number. If anything happens, anything at all, call me." Tyler took the paper with fingers that were shaking. Not from fear. From the overwhelming realization that the kid he'd stepped up to defend, the kid whose water bottle he'd shamefully handed over, the kid he'd pitted as too nice for this place, had just claimed him as a friend in front of 30 witnesses and the director of the Bureau of Internal Affairs. His face was red. His eyes were suspiciously bright. He clutched the phone number like it was a winning lottery ticket. Ethan turned and walked out, because keeping Director Graves waiting was the kind of decision that had consequences even a super soldier preferred to avoid. On the school playground, away from the building, Graves lit a cigarette and got to the point. "Ethan, I know this is presumptuous." He exhaled smoke. "But if it's possible, I'd like to purchase a batch of the super soldier serum on behalf of the Republic." The words came out, and Graves felt something release in his chest. He'd been holding this request since the moment he'd watched the serum's effects on the signal be broadcast. Every military strategist in the Republic had been thinking the same thing since the hospital fight. If one enhanced soldier could do what Ethan had done, what could 100 do? 1,000? The serum wasn't just a biological upgrade. It was a force multiplier that could redefine the Republic's military capabilities overnight. Graves had been a director long enough to know that asking directly was better than dancing around it. But he'd also never been this nervous making a request, because the person he was asking wasn't a subordinate or a contractor. It was an 18-year-old who held leverage that no government official in the Republic's history had ever possessed. Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Director Graves, it's not that I want to reject you outright." He chose his words carefully. "The serum is too dangerous for mass production. Think about it. If it were widely distributed, even within the military, how long before a sample leaked? How long before someone sold it? How long before a criminal got their hands on a dose? Can you imagine how many police officers it would take to capture a single criminal who'd been enhanced by the serum?" Graves had prepared for objections. "I can guarantee that every dose would be under bureau supervision. Strict chain of custody. Delivered only to military personnel who've been vetted." Director Graves. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "I believe you. Personally. Completely. But I don't trust everyone." He paused. "Think about those Education Bureau officials today. Petty men with small amounts of power, abusing it the moment they had an audience. Or think about the Whitfield family. The name landed like a stone in still water. Before the defection, would anyone have suspected that a founding political dynasty would sell the republic to a foreign power? Would anyone have predicted that the bureau itself would be compromised by moles planted over decades? Graves said nothing. You can guarantee your own loyalty, Director. But can you guarantee the loyalty of every person who receives the injection? Every soldier, every officer, every bureaucrat who gains access to the supply chain? The answer is no. You know it's no. Because the Whitfield incident proved it. Graves stood in silence. The cigarette burned toward his fingers. He didn't notice. The kid was right. And the reason Graves couldn't argue wasn't because the logic was flawless, it was because the Whitfield catastrophe had been Graves' own failure. He'd guaranteed Frank Holloway's safety, and 14 agents had died. He'd trusted the Bureau's internal security, and decades of moles had gone undetected. If he couldn't keep a kidnapping from happening under his own nose, how could he guarantee that a serum capable of creating superhuman warriors wouldn't end up in the wrong hands? There's a reason the serum was never mass-produced in the Marvel Universe, Ethan thought. Captain America was one person. Not an army. And that was a deliberate choice by people far smarter than anyone in this room. The serum was designed for individuals, not armies, Ethan said. One enhanced soldier is a strategic asset. 1,000 enhanced soldiers is a civil war waiting to happen. What do you do when one of them goes rogue? When 10 of them do? When a foreign power gets a sample and enhances their own people? Graves dropped the cigarette and ground it under his heel. I understand. The disappointment was real but controlled. He was a professional. He'd made the ask, received the answer, and accepted it. Ethan, watching the director's expression, felt a twinge of guilt. The Republic had stepped in to clean up the diplomatic aftermath of the Aurelian operation. Valerian warships had sailed to the territorial boundary. The Chancellor had deployed military assets. Graves had personally driven him home. These were not small things. Being too stingy with the people who'd supported him didn't sit right. Director Graves. I can't give you the serum. But I'm not going to pretend the Republic hasn't earned something. Give me some time. I'll find a way to contribute that doesn't create the risks we just discussed. Graves looked at him for a long moment. Then nodded. That's enough, kid. Take your time. He turned and walked toward the school gate, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who'd asked for the moon and received a rain check that he trusted would be honored. Chapter 83, Chapter 82, Upheaval in the Aurelian Republic Provocation. 1,562 words. For advanced chapters patreon.com/handsomedduckgod. Watching Graves' car pull away from the house, Ethan couldn't bring himself to feel good about the deal. 3 sets of battle armor. Plus the corresponding miniature reactors for each. He felt like slapping himself. The theory was in his head. The knowledge was downloaded. But building the things consumed enormous amounts of time and material. Each suit was weeks of precision fabrication. Each reactor was a manufacturing process that couldn't be rushed without risking catastrophic failure. But there was no other way. The Valerian government had backed him at every critical moment. The original research funding from Hargrove. The military support during the Aurelian operation. The Chancellor's personal intervention. The Bureau agents who'd put their lives on the line. And the original set of armor, the Mark I, had been destroyed during Ethan's incursion into the Aurelian Republic. That sat in his gut like a stone. The armor he'd built with his own hands, in Hargrove's lab, over 3 months of isolation and obsessive work. Gone. Returning favor for favor was how Ethan operated. The people who'd been good to him got treated well. 3 armor sets and reactors was the least he could do. After Graves' visit, Frank finally stopped pushing the school enrollment issue. That alone was worth the price of admission. Given what Ethan's life looked like now, campus was about as practical as putting a fighter jet in a parking garage. He packed his bags, set up the laboratory, and disappeared into a new round of research. On the other side of the world, the Aurelian Republic was burning. Not literally. But the political conflagration consuming the government was doing damage that fire couldn't match. President Harrison Wolf's administration had been fighting a losing battle to contain the fallout from the Ethan Mercer incident. The unauthorized military operation. The fighter jets shot down on live television. The defense secretary's public humiliation. The diplomatic catastrophe of launching an attack on Valerian airspace during a civilian broadcast. There were too many eyewitnesses. Too much footage. Too many cameras that had captured the moment the Aurelian Republic's military might had been dismantled by a single teenager in a suit of armor. Wolf's political rivals smelled blood. Opposition media ran the footage on loop. Protest marches erupted in half a dozen states. The phrase "national humiliation" trended for 3 consecutive weeks. Wolf, sitting in the presidential office, stared at the mountain of documents on his desk and felt the walls closing in. He'd already removed Andrew Callister from the defense secretary position for severe dereliction of duty, and referred him to the Judicial Department. Callister, whose hand still bore the scar from Ethan Mercer's pen, had accepted his dismissal with the hollow eyes of a man who knew worse was coming. But sacrificing one official wasn't enough. The failure was too catastrophic. Everyone could see that a golden opportunity for the Aurelian Republic to secure technological dominance had slipped through the fingers of incompetent leadership. The phone on Wolf's desk rang. He looked at the caller ID, and his scalp went numb. He took a breath. Answered. Mr. Vandermeer. Good afternoon. Silence. Mr. Vandermeer, please allow me to explain. The responsibility for this situation lies entirely with Callister. His judgment. Harrison. The voice was quiet. Unhurried. The voice of a man who had never needed to raise it because people who heard it understood, on an instinctive level, what it meant. The Vandermeer family was the oldest political dynasty in the Aurelian Republic. Older than the Republic itself, some said. They didn't hold office. They didn't run for anything. They didn't need to. For over a century, they had operated behind the curtain, funding campaigns, selecting candidates, and removing leaders who failed to perform. Harrison Wolf was the most powerful man in the Aurelian Republic. The man on the phone was the most powerful man in the room, where that title was decided. I suggest you hand over the presidency. Gracefully. The words arrived without emotion. Without malice. Without room for negotiation. Wolf felt his spine dissolve. He sagged into his chair, the phone pressed against his ear, his mouth opening and closing without producing sound. He knew the math. Public opinion didn't matter. Opposition pressure didn't matter. As long as the Vandermeer family stood behind a president, everything could be managed. Scandals evaporated. Investigations stalled. Rivals found their funding suddenly dry. But when the Vandermeer family withdrew their support, presidents didn't survive. They didn't fight back. They didn't appeal to the public or rally their base. They resigned because the alternative was being destroyed so thoroughly that their grandchildren would still be paying for it. He tried to speak. To plead. To offer something. Nothing came out. Because he knew that any plea would be useless. After the call ended, Harrison Wolf sat in the presidential office of the most powerful nation on earth and stared at nothing. He understood what came next. And the light in his eyes went out. 2 months after Ethan entered the laboratory, the news detonated. Aurelian Republic President Wolf fails to secure our re-election. In the entire history of the Aurelian Republic, only a handful of sitting presidents had failed to win a second term. Under normal circumstances, incumbency was an almost insurmountable advantage. A sitting president who wanted re-election got re-election. Wolf hadn't just lost. He'd been removed. And when the leaders of every nation on the planet learned who had replaced him, the reaction was universal: alarm. President Elias Kane. The name alone sent foreign ministries into emergency sessions. Kane was the most prominent hawk in the Aurelian Republic's political establishment. His public image had been forged in a conflict in the Eastern Sovereignty Theater, where he'd held the rank of Major General. Against explicit orders from his superiors, he'd launched an unauthorized offensive that had resulted in devastating civilian casualties. When the military tribunal convened, Kane had shown no remorse. He'd stood at the podium, looked the judges in the eye, and declared that everything he'd done was in the service of the Aurelian Republic. The tribunal had ended his military career. The Vandermeer family had given him a new one. With a once-in-a-generation genius emerging in Valoria, the question on every analyst's mind was immediate and obvious: why would the Aurelian Republic elect a warmonger as president? What was their intention? Kane's inaugural address answered the question with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The speech was short, aggressive, built on a single thesis: the people and actions that had brought shame to the Aurelian Republic would pay a terrible price. He didn't name Ethan Mercer. He didn't need to. Everyone on the planet knew exactly who he was talking about. This wasn't a dog whistle. It was a bullhorn. In the laboratory, Ethan watched the inauguration footage on his phone during a break between fabrication cycles. Pay a terrible price. He snorted. He hadn't even settled his own accounts with the Aurelian Republic yet, and they were already threatening him. The fighter jets that attacked him during the verification meeting. The operation that kidnapped Frank. The defense secretary who'd held his uncle hostage. Ethan wasn't a generous person on his best days. And this was not his best day. He opened his social media account. His personal page, which had become one of the most followed accounts in the Republic, was a scene of near-total harmony. After the Aurelian operation and the super soldier serum, his critics had been completely silenced. His fan base was rabid, loyal, and absolutely merciless toward anyone who said a word against him. The comment section was a no man's land for detractors. One negative word, and the response was swift, overwhelming, and brutal. Ethan typed a post. To celebrate the glorious retirement of Aurelian Republic President Harrison Wolf, I've decided to hold a press conference in the middle of next month. A sneak peek: this time, the product is related to intelligent robotics. Details to follow. He hit publish and went back to work. The post detonated across the global internet in minutes. The reaction was instantaneous and volcanic. He's celebrating Wolf's removal. That's a direct slap in Kane's face. This kid just publicly provoked the president of the most powerful nation on Earth. A teenager is picking a fight with a warmonger head of state. Has he lost his mind? But the people who'd watched Ethan Mercer fight his way out of the Aurelian Republic's military encirclement on live television felt differently. This is the same guy who took down 40 fighter jets with a palm laser. The same guy who flew into enemy territory alone to rescue his uncle. Compared to that, poking a president on social media is child's play. Meanwhile, in the presidential office of the Aurelian Republic, Elias Kane read the post on his screen and allowed himself a cold, thin smile. The provocation was juvenile. Transparent. The kind of thing a teenager did because he hadn't yet learned that the world punished bravado. Kane had reached the presidency by understanding one thing better than anyone else in the political establishment: when your opponent made an emotional decision, you made a strategic one. He stood, walked to the window, looked east toward the direction of Valoria. A press conference. A beat. Perhaps that's an I. Chapter 84, Chapter 83, A Brand New Field, Artificial Intelligence Debuts. 1824 words. For advanced chapters /patreon.com/handsomeduckgod. Ethan's social media post had detonated a firestorm. Intelligent robotics. Of everything Ethan Mercer had built so far, the reactor, the armor, the signal bee, none of them touched the field that every scientist on the planet considered the true final frontier: artificial intelligence. The reactor was physics. The armor was engineering. Both were extraordinary, but they operated within frameworks that human science could at least conceptualize, even if it couldn't replicate them. Intelligence was different. The challenge wasn't power or materials or fabrication. It was the word intelligent. A machine that could think independently, process novel situations, make autonomous judgments in real time without pre-programmed responses for every scenario. Currently, on the entire planet, only one thing could do that: the human brain. Ethan Mercer was claiming he could build a second one. The comment section split along predictable lines. Mercer's ego has officially outgrown his talent. I'm a computer science major. With existing technology, creating a machine capable of independent thought is fundamentally impossible. The computational architecture doesn't exist. The serum clearly went to his head. Those were the critics. The hired trolls from the Aurelian Republic's Information Warfare Division. The genuine skeptics who'd been proven wrong before but couldn't stop themselves from betting against this kid one more time. Ethan's fan base responded with the specific, overwhelming aggression of people who'd watched their guy defy reality enough times that doubting him felt like doubting gravity. Remember the last time someone said Mercer couldn't do something? Remember what happened? Besides, he said, related to intelligent robotics. Not fully sentient AI. Learn to read. Ethan scrolled through the argument, shook his head, and closed the app. No amount of words would settle this. The product would speak for itself, and when it did, the clowns would go quiet. They always did. He turned around and looked at the thing sitting in the center of the laboratory. A bright yellow sports car. Sleek. Low-slung. Aggressive lines. The kind of car that turned heads in parking lots and made teenagers press their faces against showroom windows. Except this one hadn't come from a showroom. Ethan had built it from scratch. Every panel, every joint, every actuator and servo and hydraulic system. The exterior was automotive. The interior was something else entirely. Bumblebee. The name rose from the Earth Prime memories like an old friend. In those memories, Transformers were an alien race, living machines from a distant planet, each one a fully sentient being with personality, emotion, and free will. The systems version was different. Through the multiverse technology systems modifications, the Transformers in this world weren't autonomous beings. They were constructs. Tools. Products that operated under their creator's command. Loyal by design, not by choice. The body was complete. The mechanical engineering was done. What remained was the most critical step: granting intelligence to the machine. Open System Panel. The interface materialized in his mind. Prestige, 15, 320. Inventory, disposable spark times 1. A necessity for granting intelligence to Transformers. Ethan pulled the spark from inventory without hesitation. It materialized in his palm. Cool to the touch. Heavier than it looked. And shaped nothing like what the movies had shown him. In the Earth Prime memories, the Allspark was a cube. Angular. Covered in alien glyphs. A relic of a civilization millions of years old. This was a pyramid. Small enough to fit in one hand. Smooth-surfaced. The material had a texture he couldn't identify, not metal, not crystal, not polymer. Something that existed in a category his scientific vocabulary didn't have a word for. A treasure capable of creating an entire race. Sitting in his palm like a paperweight. Ethan's obsessive streak kicked in immediately. He spent the next several hours running the spark through every piece of analytical equipment in the laboratory. Spectrometers. Electron microscopes. X-ray diffraction. Mass spectrometry. Thermal analysis. Nothing worked. The equipment couldn't even identify the base elements. The spark's composition was so far beyond the periodic table that Valerian science didn't have a framework for it. The material of this thing must be something far beyond vibranium, Ethan thought. A metal, or whatever it is, from a level of technology that makes everything on this planet look like stone tools. He set the analysis aside. There was no limit on how many disposable sparks he could exchange for in the future. As his knowledge grew and his system level increased, he'd crack the Allspark's secrets eventually. For now, the spark had a job to do. He placed it directly onto Bumblebee's chassis. The moment the spark made contact with the transformer's body, a flash of strange, cold light erupted from the point of contact. Not heat. Not electricity. Something else. A visible flow of energy, blue-white and luminous, began spreading from the spark across the surface of the car like liquid light tracing the pathways of a nervous system being born. The energy flow expanded. Spread along the panels. Seeped into the joints. Reached the extremities. Within minutes, the entire vehicle was wrapped in a cocoon of pulsing, living light. The transfer would take time. Ethan left it running and turned to the second project. J.A.R.V.I.S. Just a rather very intelligent system. In the Earth Prime memories, JARVIS was the reason Iron Man could fight the way he did. Not just the armor. Not just the reactor. The AI. The entity that managed targeting, navigation, threat assessment, system diagnostics, and combat analysis simultaneously, in real time, while carrying on a conversation with its creator. Without JARVIS, Iron Man was a man in a very expensive suit. With JARVIS, he was something approaching unstoppable. Using the knowledge the system had downloaded, Ethan had spent weeks programming the AI from scratch. The code base was massive. The architecture was unlike anything that existed in Valerian computer science. Neural network structures that current technology couldn't even model, running on processing frameworks that wouldn't be theoretically possible for decades. But the code was written. The system was compiled. All that remained was to flip the switch. Ethan took a breath. Pressed the activation command. Every piece of electronic equipment in the laboratory flickered simultaneously. Screens glitched. Lights pulsed. The environmental system stuttered for a fraction of a second as something vast and new swept through the facility's network like a wave passing through still water. Then, a voice. "Good afternoon, sir. JARVIS is online and ready to assist." The voice was male. Calm. Measured. Carrying the faintest undercurrent of warmth, as if the entity behind it had been designed not just to serve, but to care about the person it was serving. Ethan's pulse spiked. JARVIS. "I am always here, sir." It worked. The AI was running. Stable. Functional. And from the quality of the voice synthesis alone, Ethan could tell that this wasn't a chatbot, or a voice assistant, or any of the crude approximations that Valerian technology called artificial intelligence. This was something else entirely. In the future, when he flew in the armor, he wouldn't have to manage every system himself. JARVIS would handle targeting, navigation, threat detection, power management, and environmental monitoring while Ethan focused on the things only a human pilot could do: strategy, instinct, and the decision of when to pull the trigger. A grin spread across his face. Time to test it. JARVIS, what is this? He placed his hand on the nearest piece of lab equipment, a large analytical instrument mounted against the wall. That is a Model 7400 liquid chromatograph, independently developed by the Republic of Valoria's Institute of Analytical Chemistry. Its power consumption is 2.4 kilowatts, its detection sensitivity ranges from. The answer was immediate. Detailed. Technically precise. And delivered with a conversational fluency that made it sound less like a database query, and more like a colleague who happened to have perfect recall. Ethan moved to the next piece of equipment. Asked again. Jarvis answered instantly. And the next. And the next. Like a kid with a new toy, Ethan worked his way through nearly every instrument in the laboratory, asking Jarvis to identify, describe, and explain each one. The AI never hesitated. Never said "I don't know." Never gave an incomplete answer. Its knowledge base was connected to the global network, and it processed queries with a speed and comprehensiveness that made search engines look like card catalogs. Tony Stark's right-hand man, Ethan thought. No wonder Iron Man could fight gods and armies. He had the best co-pilot ever built running inside his helmet. Finally, Ethan turned toward the center of the lab, where the yellow sports car sat wrapped in the spark's energy field, still absorbing the transfer. Jarvis, do you know what this is? A long pause. The first silence Jarvis had produced since activation. I'm afraid I cannot identify the energy source or the transfer mechanism currently active on the vehicle. The elements involved are unknown, and the compositional complexity exceeds my analytical capabilities. Disappointment flickered across Ethan's face. Even Jarvis couldn't crack the allspark. The spark truly existed beyond anything this world could comprehend. Then Jarvis spoke again, and the words stopped Ethan cold. However, sir, I should note that within the system's AI exchange sequence, I am classified as the juvenile form. The lowest tier of artificial intelligence available. I believe that as upgrades become available, you will find the answers you're looking for. Ethan went very still. Jarvis knows about the system. The multiverse technology system was the foundation of everything. The reactor. The armor. The serum. Every miracle, every breakthrough, every impossible achievement traced back to a tattoo on his left hand, and a marketplace of technologies from fictional universes. It was also his most closely guarded secret. He hadn't told Frank. Hadn't told Hargrove. Hadn't told Graves or Hale or Ryan or anyone. He had zero intention of sharing it with any living person. And now his own AI was casually referencing it. System. Explain. How does Jarvis know you exist? The cold, measured female voice of the system materialized in his mind. The host need not worry. The artificial intelligence designated Jarvis is classified as an extension of the system's will. Its loyalty to the host is absolute. 100%. There is no possibility of betrayal, deviation, or unauthorized disclosure. Jarvis cannot reveal the system's existence to any external party. The restriction is hard-coded at a level deeper than its operational programming. Ethan's heartbeat settled back to normal. Slowly. An extension of the system's will. Not just an AI he'd programmed. Something deeper. Something connected to the same source that had given him the memories, the technology, and the marketplace. He looked at the laboratory. At the yellow car wrapped in alien light. At the screens displaying Jarvis's diagnostic readouts. At the faint blue glow of the tattoo on his left hand. His arsenal was growing. And the press conference was 3 weeks away. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.